there. This episode is all going to be about alternatives for the Fujifilm X100V, which is either sold out or being sold for an incriminatingly huge amount of money in the used market. This camera is so sought after because I personally think it's overhyped. Here you see two of my episodes on that. But regardless, there are far more budget-friendly alternatives out there which actually provide you with excellent image quality, a fantastic shooting experience, and most importantly, a budget-friendly option. So here we go. Now, the alternatives obviously for the X100V are the X100F, the fourth edition, which goes roughly around the $1,000 marks now because the prices have gone up thanks to a TikToker. You can also buy the X100T, the X100S or the original X100, and make no mistake about these cameras. They might be older, and yes, they don't have all the latest tech as the X100V has, but they will still provide you with a similar, maybe even sometimes better shooting experience, while rendering fantastic image quality with nice rich colors. And the older the cameras get, the closer they mimic the actual analog film experience in terms of what their image quality is like. Let me know if you agree with that, by the way, in the comments below. So that's the obvious ones, but if you really want something more techy and you want a camera where you might have to buy a lens with, so with an interchangeable lens, there definitely is the Fuji X-E4, which has exactly the same specs, technical specs, as the X100V, with one big caveat there: you have to buy the lens. It's interchangeable lenses, which I think is actually a pretty good deal because you can play with your little focal lengths. Yeah, so those are the obvious ones, but do not fear, Fuji is still here with some even better alternatives, because the X-E4 is still going for $999 new or even $1,100, and on the used market it's about $800 to $900 excluding your lens if you're a first-time buyer. So if you, for instance, have the X-E3, which sports similar features to the X-T3, you're going to be buying that for somewhere between $400 and $600. So that leaves you a lot of cash left to buy a great lens. Yeah, I would always recommend for your Fuji lenses either the 23mm f2.0, the 27mm f2.0, or even the 18 to 55. You see the links in the descriptions below. Yeah. Alternatively, you can go into the XT 1, 2s. You pay somewhere between $300 and $700 for those. Great cameras as well, fantastic user experience, all the buttons and dials on it. Now let me know what your alternative is here for Fuji. The next one here is probably a camera brand which you've heard online being ridiculed because of its poor continuous autofocus. Yes, I'm talking about Panasonic Lumix Micro Four Thirds, but do not fear, Micro Four Thirds is here. And the reason why I'm mentioning this, there's three cameras which I can really recommend as alternatives, which go from somewhere between $300 to $500 used, or you can buy them even new for under $1,000. The first one is the GX85, which is a little compact rangefinder body with image stabilization in the body. It has a Micro Four Thirds sensor, which people talk a lot about. It might not be that great. It has an interchangeable lens mount, and you have 4K video. So if you're somebody who's into hybrid shooting, definitely a good budget alternative you can buy. Gives you a similar experience, takes great images, great stills, and more importantly, and you can see an episode here as well, Panasonic has a really cool budget lineup of lenses. So that's one of the things. Now, the obvious kahunas here in the room are the two other cameras, are the LX100 and the LX100 Mark II. You see I'm getting confused again of Panasonic. Both of these cameras have fixed lenses, 24 to 70 equivalent, f2.8 I believe they are. But the most important thing is the lens is made by Leica, and that is something you definitely see. These cameras are full manual dials, and their picture profiles are great. You can really take some awesome pictures with it. It's small, it's light to carry, it's easy to operate, it supports 4K capabilities, there's no microphone jack, but for photography first, at 24-70 zoom, the small factor, and they kind of look cool as well. And you can pick an LX100 up now for about $300 and an LX100 Mark II for about $500, and those cameras really render excellent image quality. I would say excelente. Next one up is Nikon, the ZFC. Yes, the camera looks exactly like a Fuji X-T1, 2, 3 or 4. It has the ISO and shutter dials. Nikon released this camera, and I think if you're looking for an alternative on this camera, it's still interchangeable, a lens camera. So the upside is you can pick up these copies for about $700 to $800, which is pretty good. The downside here is that the Z mount for the Nikon cameras has not been fully matured, and they're quite pricey. So that will push it probably up to $1,200-1,300, which you'll be spending. But it's Nikon. Excellent image quality, great cameras, great user experience, and it's the closest thing outside of Fuji which I've seen which really mimics it. People say it's a copycat. Well, you can argue about it, but I think it still renders great value. Unfortunately, I haven't tested that camera because I was a bit skeptical of it, but what I've heard of it, people really seem to like it. The problem is, if you're already a Fuji user, yeah, you're gonna have to go into a new mount. So that's a bit expensive. That's a choice you have to make, but it's definitely a good alternative. Now, last but not least, in my opinion, the direct competitor to the Fujifilm X100V is a camera which is tiny. It doesn't look great. It's the Ricoh GR3, or in my case the GR3X, which has a 40mm equivalent of lens on it. It's a fixed lens. They have a crop mode on it, so you can extend it all the way to 75. This camera is so small, so pocketable, it literally fits into your pocket. The image quality is stellar, and like Fuji, they have their own film recipes as well. I would say this is probably the best, or probably the best alternative outside of Fuji's own native camera range to buy, and you can buy those for 750. Maybe if you're lucky, 650. Ricoh GR3 seems to be a bit cheaper on the used market compared to the GR3X, which I have. Both of these, these cameras are great. They've got great color profiles, fantastic touchscreen abilities. Yes, you'll be missing a viewfinder. You can buy those separately. They're about €200 or €250, but personally I'm not doing it without the viewfinder. It takes a bit of time to get used to, but immense image quality, people. Immense image quality, great shooting experience, and because it's so small, because it looks butt ugly compared to an X100 series, people don't notice it. And it's so light, you can carry it in. Yes, battery life people have been complaining about, and yes, if you use it for a full day, you're gonna have 1 or 2 or 3 maybe batteries, but if you use it for your everyday camera, hey, you will do well, unless you shoot 250 pictures a day. Last but not least, of course, is Sony, and Sony has got so many cameras you wouldn't believe it, but I'd like to focus on the Sony RX100 series, which you can pick up from somewhere, depending on the mark, from $200 to $700. Yes, they're 1-inch sensor cameras. They've got a huge following, by the way. They're small, pocketable, just like the Ricoh GR3, or if I compare it to my Sony ZV-1, similar body. They come with a fixed lens, normally either, 24 to 200 or 24 to 70. I always confuse those two, but it gives you that little bit of flexibility you need to have. Yes, it's a 1-inch sensor, but the benefit here is you've got fantastic autofocus, like on any Sony camera. It's also so small and unintrusive, you can use it for whatever you want to. And yes, you can shoot nicely in RAW, so you can actually put on the Fujifilm simulations if you really want to afterwards. So that's it for this episode, people. Thank you very much. See you next time.